Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock. I'm Sophie, and this is Vivi.
Hey, I'm currently a sophomore at Furman University, and even though I am in my second year here, my family has been here for a lot more than I have. I have an older sister that's 5 years older than me. Her name is Vivi Gutierrez. She was also on the women's soccer team, and she's currently in dental school. And then I have another older sister, and she's a senior right now. And she's also on the women's soccer team. Well, was. It's her spring semester, so she's not playing anymore. But yes, it's been fun having her on campus for the first 2 years. And I also transferred in here. My first semester was elsewhere at Southern Wesleyan University, but now I'm here, so it's all good. And I'm very excited to talk about my faith.
Yes. I've known her for a long time because both of her older sisters played for my dad, and then now she plays for my dad. Soccer here at Furman. But like we were like in the stands together.
Yes.
For a long time.
Sophie, I remember you like when we were tiny. I must have been in 5th grade and you were like in 4th grade.
We had to because when Isabella was here and when my dad was recruiting her, I would have been.
She was recruited really in 8th grade and 5 years old. So yeah, 3rd grade. Shoot.
Yeah. So I was in like
3rd, 2nd grade.
So that's crazy.
Yeah.
But then I really remember starting to like talk to you when you were like a junior, senior in high school. Mm-hmm. And I remember being like, "Oh, she's really cool." I was like, "Oh,
thank you,
smart girl." Like, and then obviously both of your sisters were here, and I'm sure some of your story will go into why you transferred. Yes. And what all that looked like. But that was really exciting. I remember over Christmas break, didn't you you guys made a video?
We did.
And I saw the video, and I was like, "Good, Vivi's coming." Like,
yes.
Perfect.
I think everyone knew I was going to end up here. But I've always been the oddball in my family, so I didn't want to commit here thinking and have everyone think that I committed here because my sisters weren't here. Right. But I'm here now. And like you said, I will go and write a little bit of that.
That's kind of what I was like, oh, I'm not going to Furman. Yeah. Because both my brothers also are here. And I was like, oh, I'm branching out, I'm different. Like,
yeah. I remember talking to you about that. I was like, yeah, don't let that sway you.
Yes, I was like convinced. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And everyone was like, and my parents were like not like pushing anything on me because they wanted me to like
make your own decision.
And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to Furman. I do not want to go to Furman. And then I was like trying to open other doors, and they were all being slammed in my face, and I had no peace about it. And I still was trying to force it. I got a roommate at another school. I put a down payment at another school. I was like, I'm not going to that school. And then I was like, why don't I have peace about this? And the Lord was like, okay, Sophie, come on. Like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah. And then to see what the Lord has for me here has been so interesting. Yeah. So, anyways, we have that in common. Okay. Tell us about your walk with Jesus.
Okay, so fortunately for me, I grew up in a faith-based home. Always going to church on every Sunday, always saying the blessing before meals, just stuff like that. I think it goes for a lot of people when I say you don't really find your faith until like you actually experience life moments. Like as a kid, I went to church, I attended church. I didn't say my prayers every night. I didn't know what Jesus' love entailed for me. I kind of was like, I believed in Jesus, but I didn't know who he was. Right. Yeah. So I didn't have that personal relationship with him. And whenever someone was sick or we had soccer and we didn't go to church, I was actually happy because half the time I didn't understand the message. Right. And I didn't know he was talking about finances or something of that matter, marriage problems. Right. And I was just like, this does not apply to me.
Yeah.
But I would say so during my middle school, I transferred to another school in high school. So originally I was at a private school, and I was involved in like secular activities. I never drank, I never partied, I never did any of that, but I was constantly cussing. I found enjoyment in cussing with my friends. I don't know. I just thought I was cool for doing it. And I found myself in relationships, if you could even call it that, that weren't oriented towards the Lord.
Yeah.
And that kind of influenced my walk as well, because I was like, okay, you say you love me if you even know
Right.
what love is at that point.
Right.
You say you love me, but you want this from me, like what? Like it was never fulfilling.
Yeah.
So transitioned to high school. That's when I actually started to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. I'm like, okay, what am I actually doing with my life? Right. My sisters were a great influence of that. Helen and Bella both are very faithful individuals, and I saw them radiate Jesus' light like no other. And I was at a point, I had a relationship that was not good at all. He, and I hope he's doing well now, and I hope all the best for him. And there's nothing wrong to say like with who he is, because he was Jesus oriented, like he wanted the love of Christ. But he had a lot of anxiety, and I didn't see anything wrong with that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna help him through this journey. Like we're gonna pursue the Lord together. And I didn't see the effects of the anxiety that it had on me. He was very what's the word? He was very insecure about like his body image and everything. Like just for a man, like you have to put on a lot of muscle, and if you can't do that, and if you're too skinny and all this. And I didn't really realize that it had an effect on me until I started losing a lot of weight. I lost about 30 pounds, and completely took a step. Like I couldn't. My parents wouldn't let me lift because I was too weak. I was too skinny. I didn't have enough muscle to sustain that weight. My mood completely changed. I didn't have the energy to do anything. When I was a kid growing up, I used to be really comical, funny. I would want to go do anything. I would love to dance. All that just went away because I was so mentally exhausted from the strain of the relationship, from the fear of food, from all of that. And so on the night of Helen's graduation, high school graduation, actually, that was when we ended things. And it was more of like, he actually called me and it was like, I know that I'm affecting you mentally. That goes to show like how much of a faithful person he is. Like he knew as well that we both needed to take a step back. And and so that relationship ended, and I thought prior to that relationship that I had found Christ because I was in a Christ-centered relationship. But I realized that I was dependent on him for my relationship with Christ. Like I was dependent on him to lead me towards Christ, and I wasn't actually pursuing him by myself. So that weekend, actually, my parents were like, okay, you need to get away. Like you need to get away from Statesboro, because where I'm from is a very small town. And everyone is related to everyone. So if I walked, people would ask me questions, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So I went to my family's coast house. And on the way there, I was just praying to God. I was just like, God, I'm numb. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I just want to experience your overwhelming love. I know that it's there. I believe that it's there. I just want to feel it. And after I said that prayer, I remember just looking out the window, because it's like an hour drive to the coast house. And I was thinking, I've never seen an alligator in the 15 years. In the 15 years of my life, I've never seen an alligator at the coast. And that's, I guess it's normal to see one, but and it was just a random thought. It was just random. And so we get there the next morning. I was like, okay, I'm going to start this new like part of my life off right. So we have a dock, and it leads like into marsh and everything. And I woke up at sunrise, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go spend time with the Lord. So I took my Bible, I went out there, and I looked to my right, and because I realized like some ruffling in the marsh, and there was an alligator. And then I looked to my left, and there were dolphins, and everything, like just the sunrise, just like everything. And I was just like, this is the God that I serve. And even though when I tell that story, people are like, oh, it's just a coincidence. There's an alligator. Like you said, it's kind of common there. I'm like, no. 15 years of my life, it was never common for me. And I went quite frequently. And just seeing it, like, he was speaking so specific to me that was just it for me. That was my turning point. Cool. And when I think of a testimony, like, there's so many moments in my life, like even now, that add to my testimony. But that was probably the moment that I was just like, okay, God, here I am. Like I'm done with the things of this world. I'm done with, that doesn't go to show that he won't test you.
Right.
And that you're not going to struggle.
Right.
But that was probably the point of my life. That was the point of my life where I completely turned towards the Lord. Like, I stopped cussing. I stopped wanting the things of this world. And that is the beauty of having a relationship with Christ. Like, you don't want those things.
Right. And he, like, changes our heart for that.
Yeah,
he
changes
gives us
our
a
heart.
new heart. I don't know where that, there's a verse in it, like, talks about, like, giving us a new heart. And then we have to, like, pray and ask our desires to be aligned with his, to, like, turn from the things of this world.
Yeah.
What I think is kind of interesting about your story is growing up sometimes in a Christian home, it is easy to, like, this is so boring. And, like, okay, it's just something I have to do. In the knowledge of God. But having all of that because you're at church and you're learning these things, but then, like, what does that look like to have that relationship with him? And sometimes that doesn't come until we learn our dependence, that we need him. And I think that's really interesting in your story of being like, sometimes growing up we don't really know that we need God, and some kids growing up do know because they have, like, everyone has different growing up experiences. But sometimes it takes to learn being like, okay, I was dependent on this boyfriend, or I was dependent on not eating or hanging out with these people. And then once something like that is taken away, it's like, what am I dependent on? Oh, I need to be dependent on Jesus. And then what that looks like to turn to him. So that's really sweet. The Lord, like, showing up and ask. I think sometimes we just have to look for the alligator. Like, whatever that is in your life.
You can't ignore it either.
Right.
Like, that's the beauty of free will. Like, he will always answer your prayers as if you are willing to accept his answer.
Right.
It might not align with what you desire, but what we desire is not what's best for us.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people, especially now in our culture, it's like, well, it doesn't align with my heart's desires. Well, God wants to change your heart for a reason.
Right.
Like, you have to accept his invitation.
That's good.
And we actually talked about this at Bible study. I think it was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about peace and, like, how do you know that it's God's peace that is overwhelming you, and what is peace? Right. And I was just like, well, in our culture, all we want is control. Right. Like, we want control over every aspect of our life. If we don't have control over it, then, we stress, we worry, whatever. Like, some things are just out of our control. And then I'm just like, I'm at most peace, especially with my relationship with Christ, when I realize that I shouldn't be in control of everything, and I just lay everything on the floor.
That's so good.
So why do we want to be in control when it's just stressful and worrying, and it causes anxiety and whatever is the case? Because, like, God ultimately has the final say so. Right. No matter what you choose to do.
Right. Like, releasing the idea that we have control. This weekend I led a middle school girls group at a winter retreat at our church, and the whole idea was, like, God is supreme of the weekend, and God is supreme over all of these different aspects of our life. And a lot of it was like, are you willing to let go of this control? And it's like, God has the whole world in his hands, but we're trying to have our hands closed, and we just have to, like, unclench our fist to give the idea back of control, because the Lord is already, like, holding it all. And a lot of the, like, girls, like, in their middle school, it's like, oh, well, I want to hang out with this friend, but I know this friend is hurting me because of this, or I don't want to wake up and read my Bible, or I don't want to, and it's all of those little things. But talking about, like, if the Lord is sovereign and we believe that he's, like, supreme over all in his supremacy, then why do we not bow down to it? Why do we so badly want to desire control still? And that was something so interesting to, like, lead them through, but then in return, like,
reflect on it yourself.
Reflecting on myself, because I was like, I believe that God is supreme over all. I believe that he is in full control and has authority. So why do I still try to hold on to all these little things in my life when I let myself down, but God doesn't let me down, because he knows what's best for me, because he knows what's best for the kingdom, and I'm his daughter. And so I think that was something that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's also it's so just, like, being in control. It's so just relieving when you are in the Word constantly. Like, sometimes, girls, like, you struggle to read your Bible every day, but I'm so much more relieved and so much less stressful than when I take that time and just read every day. And I'm actually in the Word, because meditation leads to obedience. And then when you start seeing that obedience, you align your life with Christ. And I think that that's a very important a lot of people will say that you don't need to read your Bible to have faith in Jesus, which you don't like coming to like I did when I came to faith. I didn't read my Bible. It was just a moment. Like I just knew, I just felt His love. But reading my Bible helps my pathway align with His.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that it's very important to remind ourselves, like sometimes if our schedule gets too busy or something like that, that we still need to make time for God.
Yeah.
And like spending time in His Word, because when you actually, it has like so many avenues where like you can align yourself with a different situation, and it can help you through that certain situation.
Yeah. So good. And to get in the Word. Okay, tell a little bit about going to one college and then knowing that wasn't right.
Okay, so my recruitment process was like she said, I play soccer. Was a little screwed because I fractured my hip during prime recruitment. And so I was not able to showcase myself in front of college coaches. And when I did, I was talking to her dad, but I was like she said, I didn't want to go here because I didn't want people thinking I was just going here because my sisters went here. And I wanted to do something different. Like I truly did. I wanted to. I've been to this campus for the past I don't even know how long. I'm like I just want to try something new. So the coach so Southern Wesleyan University is a highly religious accredited school. They're Wesleyan, as in the name. I didn't know what that denomination meant. When I went, I was just like, okay, it mostly aligns with what I believe. So I'm just like, and it's we had to go to chapel twice a week, Monday, Wednesday. We had a student-led ministry, which was called Reach on Sunday nights. We went to church. Like we had all these requirements that we had to fulfill, which I loved. Every aspect of that I loved. Yeah. The community was great. The people were great. I wouldn't complain anything about my friends there. I'm going this Sunday because my best friend is preaching at Reach, and I'm still going. But the events that transpired there, the academics weren't what everyone made them out to be. I suffered from a concussion and another hip injury while I was there, and that took me out for 2 months in school, and I still passed all my classes with 100 average. And so I'm just like, and I'm on the pre-law track, so this is not preparing me for what real life is. I can't just cruise through college and then get to law school and just be stubborn. So I knew the credits that Furman had, and I was just like, okay, I want that education. And I was very comfortable in my faith. I never talked to anyone that didn't need help or in some sort of way.
Surrounded.
And I'm like, it was just in a little bubble. We were in a little bubble. We didn't have to worry about real life stuff. I'm like, this is just like, I don't want to be comfortable in my faith. I want to be put in uncomfortable situations. So I had a medically redshirt my freshman year. But there were a lot of things that transpired. I was hospitalized multiple times because one practice they thought I had overheated, which made no sense because I hadn't even been outside. I was just I had a migraine at the time, and I was just seeing black spots, and I passed out from the migraine because I take Excedrin when I have it, and that usually curtails the effects, but I didn't have Excedrin, so I took Advil, and that did not touch it. So I passed out, and they decided to dunk me in an ice bath. Well, I have a low heart rate as it is, so my heart rate dropped to 20, and they had to rush me to the ER because I wasn't I was unconscious, of course. But if I were conscious, I would have told them not to dunk me in the ice bath for that reason. So the ER visit was like 10 grand, and they were trying to make me pay for it. And so my whole, even after transferring here, like I had to deal with insurance companies and everything. And I'm like, I can't pay for this because first SWU doctors were in charge of what was happening at that point in time. It was not my conscious decision, and the school should be reliable to pay for that incident. That was just one of the many one of the many things. I was also the trend with me. get involved with people that I probably shouldn't, just because like I feel the need to help.
Yeah.
I got into a relationship that was not good for me. It was my first one after my high school one.
Right.
And I don't know. I just like, it's college. It's a new era in my life. Like I swoop. Like, of course they're gonna be Christian.
Right,
This is
right.
like, this is where people
Seems
meet their
good.
husband.
Yeah,
It's
right.
kind of like a liberty.
Right.
So, he made everything seem like I was one for him, and that he was very much after sexual desires.
Okay.
And of course I'm waiting for marriage, and that was a very concrete no for me.
Right.
But that was something like he couldn't shake. And that made me feel honestly awful, because you're supposed to be, the man is supposed to lead the woman in a relationship towards Christ.
Right.
That is stated in the Bible. And I was basically the man in that relationship. And thankfully, thankfully, when I made the decision to transfer, that relationship ended. I was just like, I can't do this. The whole thing, it was just a bad relationship. But I hope he's doing well now.
Also, hope you're doing good.
Yeah. But then that was when I decided to come here, because primarily it was because of education. Yeah. I just wanted to be set on a good path for law school. Yeah. And also, I knew that the soccer was much better here. Yeah. So I was very excited to meet the girls, and they have been a family. They've been so loving. We have Bible study every Wednesday night, and I couldn't ask for a better second family, I would say. Yeah. And I also met my boyfriend here, and I know me in a lot of relationships, but this one is actually, he leads me to Christ in every single way, and I get that compliment a lot. So it's really reassuring, and I don't have to worry about my relationship with God being impeded by his relationship. Yeah,
that's really cool.
So
that's like also so encouraging for like listening for girls that like are single. It's like, don't settle for somebody who you think you can like fix up.
Yeah. And God, I will have to say, God works in the best of ways, because coming in, because Helen, my sister, she's dating Connor, and they were both on FCA leadership. Yeah. So they knew Jack before I even. Right. Jack's my boyfriend, by the way.
Hi, Jack.
Before I even got here. Yeah. And my sister was joking with me. She was like, Vivi, I have someone in line for you. Like, I can't wait for you to meet him. And I shut down the idea. I did not want it, because I was so mentally drained from the last one. Right. I was just like, no, Helen, I need my season of singleness. That was the excuse I gave my last boyfriend. Like, when I broke up with him, I was like, I just need my season of singleness. Right. And I got here, and God just kept saying, like, nope, this is the one for you. And I tried fighting it, and he can even tell you I tried fighting it. But I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way now. Right. Like, everything just aligned, really perfectly. And I don't know, Furman has just been a blessing. Yeah.
I really like how you said you were comfortable in your faith there. And I think often for me, maybe it's not at a school, like whoever's listening, like wherever you are, like when you get comfortable in your faith, what does it look like to take the next step of obedience with God? And maybe the next step of obedience is like sharing with somebody you don't know, or starting a Bible study for your sports team, or like talking to the person at your work about Jesus, or waking up early to take your kids to church, like whatever that looks like. Because I think when we get comfortable, you're not really growing.
No.
And that was something that was really hard when I first got to school here, because I was so uncomfortable. And I think I was challenged so much in my faith that it already, like being like 5 months in, I've already grown so much in my faith, in my relationship with Jesus. But it wasn't easy. Like, it was hard and it was tiring. But I learned like what it looked like to depend on the Lord fully. And just be in situations where I was like, this is really hard. What do I do here? And just learning what that looks like to lean on the Lord and grow with Him. And so I think sometimes, like when I find myself getting really comfortable in my faith, it's because I'm either ignoring the Spirit, or not being obedient, or not taking a next step of what it looks like to be obedient. Out of like the overflow of love, put my heart for Jesus.
Yeah.
So I think that was really interesting. And then just like the things the Lord has, kind of shut down at school with like health problems in school and things like that, just being like, no, 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 like trying to make you all be like, this is not really that great. I'm ready to leave. And then like preparing you to leave. And then come here and just like the Lord opening doors, and not to say it's all been easy. I'm sure there's been like lots of hiccups.
Oh yes,
here too.
I fractured. That's another thing. I fractured my tibia, so I'm recovering from that. But I mean,
one thing after another.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something gonna knock me down. It only makes me stronger in the long run.
Right.
And I wouldn't like if this were to happen at SWU. If I were still there, I'd be like, okay, I need to transfer.
Right.
But now that it's happened here, it's not transferring. Is not in the side. Yeah. So also like at SWU, I was comfortable with my faith, but I wasn't getting the nutrition that I needed. If that makes sense, because I was reading my Bible, but I didn't feel nourished. I was just reading it to read, kind of thing, or if it was a requirement. Even though my friends there, they were great. I like their love for Jesus is amazing, and they're so fun and in the best ways. But I was tired of not being able to help other people, if that makes sense.
Well, we're called to love others.
And I was never in an environment where I could do that. And when I was, it was for a very short period of time, or I couldn't enhance the conversation to a more like a deeper surface level. So but yeah, I love it here, and like I said, it's been nothing but a blessing. And even though like the academics, the one thing that I struggled with when I first transferred was my identity in academics. And I think it's something that I still struggle with, just because I'm a type A person, so I'm very much a perfectionist, and I have to have A's and everything, and the whole Furman A- system, with that dropping your GPA, that really did not like. I like the challenge, but my first semester, I had my FYW class. It was the professor was a very harsh grader, and I don't think a lot of people. I ended up being fine in the class, but I was stressing, and I called, like, Isabella had to call me because her and I are very alike in academics, and Helen had to call me down because I made a B. I made a B on my first paper, and I thought that the world was ending, and I was like, I was so stressed, and in the reality of things, like, that doesn't really matter. Like, one professor does not get to like, have that impact on. And I'm just like that. I had to take time to really like accept, like, maybe this is what the Lord wants for me. Like, am I placing too much of my effort in academics when I should be placing my identity elsewhere, especially in Him? Like,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's a really good reminder.
Well,
I'm glad you're here. And thank you for coming on.
Of
and
course.
Sharing your story.
Of course.
And thank you guys for listening. And I'll see you next week.
Bye.